Welcome to the She Hit Refresh podcast, a podcast for women aged 30 and up who want to transform their life by moving abroad. This season is brought to you by International Living. And I'm Seppi, rhymes with Peppy, your host. So today we have a really great one for you. For those that are looking for remote work, you want to listen in. Today I have my friend and remote work guru, Michelle Coulson, joining us on the podcast. Michelle is the CEO and founder of Remote Rebellion, which enables people to design their dream lives with freedom and flexibility by getting remote work. She's originally from the UK and she worked as a recruiter for 7 years. And during lockdown, she was one of those people who was forced to work remotely, yay, and took advantage of work from Bali instead of London. But then that dreaded return to office came in 2021 and she said, no way. And so she quit her job and she set up Remote Rebellion, which we'll learn more about. Since then, she has helped hundreds of people get a remote job that aligns with their values. And I'm sure this has piqued your interest now. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I hope you don't mind me just grabbing my tea. I'm looking like the stereotypical British person with a constant cup of tea in my hand. So hello. Thanks for the welcome.
No, I love it. Let's not fight who we are, right? So we have so much that I want to talk about today, but let's just take it from the top so people can hear a little bit about your background. So yeah, where you're from. We know you're from the UK, but where you're from and what life looked like before you got into remote work and into your digital nomad journey.
There's a longer version and a shorter version. I'll try and keep it somewhere in the middle. But I was working for a tech company in 2016, 2017, and that was back in the day when software engineers and the market was much better and those people could demand what they wanted. So when I was calling them and saying, hey, would you like to come and work for this company? Like, what are you going to give me? And I'm like, what, a job? They're like, that wasn't enough. They're like, is it remote? Are you going to give me this much? Is it flexible? And I kept going to my manager saying, we can't hire people that are asking for remote work. And he's like, we work in the office. We can't do that. So I did about a year of nagging and pushing and eventually got 4 days a week remote. We had to come to the office on Fridays. I had a taste of it. I had a taste of remote working. I was like, I like this. And do you know what? I loved the office I worked in. I loved the people I worked with, the role. I genuinely had a great job. But I just also loved having the freedom to be able to go where I wanted and work from where I wanted. You know, if it was the time of the month where I just wanted to sit under my covers and sort of like work from home and not get on the tube every day. So that's where the journey started back then. And as you mentioned, during the pandemic, we were all locked down. I was like, why am I living in London? I don't even like it here. I loved London for a period of time. And then suddenly I woke up one day and it no longer fitted what I wanted. I felt lonely in this big city. I hated doing the commute. It was cold. And I'm like, why am I living here? The only reason I'm here is for this job. Why can't, and I've proven that I can do this job remotely. So what the hell am I doing here? And I was spiraling into a bit of a depression, if I'm honest. I was thinking about what made me happy. And for me, it was being by the ocean, being in the sea, by the sea, anything around the water. If anyone's ever been to London, not the best place for warm sea life. So yeah, that was what life looked like before.
Thank you for sharing and having known you for a bit here. I mean, Michelle and I connected virtually and I was trying to think where we even met. I don't know. Maybe it was LinkedIn. I'm not sure if someone put us in contact, but we finally got to meet in person last year in Bansko, at the Bansko Nomad Fest, which is a digital nomad conference that happens once a year. But I met you in person and just following, your travel since then, like I see you, yes, as the water person that you are. So it's hard for me to see you living in London. That also doesn't seem like it fits from an outsider's perspective. Yeah. But let's talk about that. So you were working as a recruiter in London. But then, during the pandemic, you got to work remotely. Tell us a little bit about, obviously you don't want to be in London, but how did you realize like, oh, I'm just going to go to Bali. I'm going to do that. What was that decision like, that moment like where you had that realization, like I can do this?
It was someone that I'd met traveling a few years back. Shout out to Alvin. And he said to me, Bali was his happy place. And it was like one of those moments that, the picture postcard movies where I looked off into the distance wistfully and I was like, happy place, where's my happy place? And it's like, repeating and echoing, happy place, happy place. And I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, it's being by the ocean. When I went to a surf camp in the north of Spain the year before and I just remember being so in the zone of not thinking about anything else, of like blissfully being in the zone and in the moment when I was surfing. And I'm like, right, okay, it's March 2020. I can't go anywhere. So where can I get my happy place? We're not able to travel. So for me, that was surfing. So that as soon as I could, Bali seemed like a good option. It was in the heat. I can't remember if I asked permission from my boss, like, can I go and work from Bali? Or if I just asked for forgiveness later. I can't remember. I think I might have mentioned it. I can't actually remember. It feels like a lifetime ago now. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go. They're going to call us back into the office sooner or later. This pandemic's going to end at some point. The lockdown's going to come down. I'm just going to go for as long as I can and then go back to the real world and go back to my normal life, because that's what you do when you're in your 30s. You just have to bite the bullet and just not be happy and just do a job that doesn't serve you, or in a life that doesn't serve you. So I genuinely went to Bali with the intention that it'll have to end at some point.
Because we didn't know. When I look back too, I'm like, oh my God, we were all so naive. Like everything just seemed so temporary, ephemeral, and we were going to go back to the way things were a few months later. But that's not what happened. But I guess with a lot of companies, that is what happened, right? They had that return to office, which is what happened to you, because you're living your best life in Bali. And how long were you there before your company said, okay, we need you to come back to London?
It was about 2 months, and I was surfing in the morning. I was working like midday to like 8 p.m. or 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. And I'm not a nighttime person. I'm a bit of a granny. So I like to wake up early and enjoy the mornings. So it really worked well for me that I could just work at night or in the evening up until like 9, 10 p.m. And I had the whole day to myself, or the whole morning to myself, where I can do what I wanted to do that nourished me, that felt good. And I didn't have to choose between having a decent job that was well paid and actually being happy and healthy. So it was 2 months that call came. And I just remember feeling absolutely sick. And actually, the part of the story I don't share that often is I had my flight home booked, and I got COVID and couldn't take the flight. You know, you had to do one of those tests back then.
Wow.
Had no symptoms. I honestly felt the best I'd ever felt in my life. And I kept getting these tests done because I didn't believe this was real. And I was like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. I can't fly home. This is awful. And I was like, this is fate. I'm not supposed to go back to that life. And that's when the cogs started turning. And I was like, maybe I could stay here. Do you know what? Screw it. I quit. I'm going to find out a way to make this work. And I did. And it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy. I searched and looked for remote work for a while. And I realized after I'd quit, it's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. And I had a background in recruitment. I had a good network, but getting something remote from Bali compared to like remote UK, for example, was a lot harder than I anticipated. And that's what actually gave me the idea for Remote Rebellion. I figured if I'm having a hard time with this, as someone who knows recruitment and has this network, I've got 7 years of experience, I'm good at what I do. If I'm having a hard time, most other people are going to be having a hard time as too, without trying to like blow my own trumpet.
Are you someone who makes decisions on a whim like that? Because that's pretty bold to be like, I'm just going to quit this good job of mine and just stay in Bali.
Yep,
yes,
all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
And it can be my downfall, but it also can work out really well. I tend to act and then think later.
Yeah, I hear ya. Hey, I'm like that too. So it's great to, know that you're like-minded, because I just trust myself that I can figure it out, right? Like I will figure it out. Like when I moved abroad, it wasn't so much on a whim, but I did move, I think, a lot quicker than most people do. And I usually tell people like, don't do what I did. Like, here's the way you should do it to set yourself up for success. But, if you know yourself, like, you can handle, and making a rash decision.
I did an assessment, whether I did this consciously or not. I thought about it and I was like, okay, what is the worst that can happen here? The worst that can happen, and I had a mortgage to pay in London. I didn't really have many savings. I was like, the worst that can happen is I don't get a job. I lose my house. Full stop. And I'm like, okay, I can go back and live at my sister's. I've got family who love me around me. I've got food on the table, a roof over my head, and I can pick up a job doing anything back home. And I was like, that's the worst case scenario. I'm pretty privileged and I should make the most of that privilege.
Yes. Well, tell us then about Remote Rebellion. I mean, I'm sure it has evolved since then, but you're in Bali and you're like, I can't find a job, so I'm just going to create my own and start a business. So tell us about how it started and maybe how it's evolved a bit.
Yeah, I didn't actually start the business because I couldn't find a role, I ended up getting 2 freelance gigs. So I was helping to startups to hire remotely, and I loved it. I was getting good pay. I was doing a good job. I was training the team of recruiters in Vietnam, actually. And that was a good gig. I could have carried on doing that for probably years, but I just felt this like kind of niggle of like there's something missing. And helping people on the side gave me such satisfaction. So I would help people with their resumes. I would tell them of all the job sites that I looked on and where they could find, and told them how to adjust their LinkedIn profile so that recruiters would be attracted to them. And all these things I was teaching people, I was getting feedback and people saying, I did that thing that you told me to do and it really made a difference. Now I've got an interview. What do you suggest I say in the interview? And I got a kick out of like, oh, I know stuff. And these people are getting insights from me. It felt like it's an ego boost, if I'm honest, because I'm like, oh, I have this wealth of knowledge to give and people are getting results from it. So I think the cogs were turning a little bit on that. I was earning enough to do these freelance gigs. But I thought, now I've seen both sides of it. I'm helping companies to hire, but I've been on the other side of knowing how hard it is to get in front of those remote first companies. So I think it was a combination of this. It was the company was never really born out of a need, more of a desire to impart that wisdom, I guess, on other people. So other people, you don't have to just go back to this 9 to 5. You don't have to go back to New York or London or Paris to earn decent money and get job satisfaction. You can do both. They say you can't have it all. Says who? Why not?
Love that. So then really you just wanted to help people. You saw that you were impacting people and this was a way that you could impact even more. So tell us about, the company, what you do.
Yeah. So Remote Rebellion, in a nutshell, I help people to get remote work. And that is in a real high level. The way I do that is several parts. One is helping people figure out what it is that they want to do or can do remotely, or both, ideally. People get so focused, especially in North America. I've been speaking with a lot of people. When I ask them, what do you want to do? And they're like, oh, well, my experience is this, and I've got this, and I've got that. I was like, that's not what I asked you. I asked you what you want to do. And so many people, especially people in like their 40s and 50s, have been stumped by that question of like, never actually sat back and thought about that. I just went to college and then I went this and I got a promotion and I went up the ranks, never stopping to think what they actually wanted. And that's sad, don't you think? Because so-called land of freedom and land of free, you're not really free because you're in these golden handcuffs where you're doing something that you've been told is what you're supposed to do. You don't even know if that's making you happy. And I think that's probably why you must see from so many people, right? People over 30, they realize, oh, I want something different now. I've done what I was supposed to do for so long. Now I want what I want and what's nourishing for me and my family, if they have a family, of course. So it's helping people figure that out. What does that look like for them? Showing them where to find these remote opportunities, showing them how to showcase their value to employers on their resume and their LinkedIn, how to get ahead of the competition because remote jobs are really competitive, how to interview and really impress. There's a bit of mind games that people need to do in the interviews of bit of manipulation, if I'm honest, showing them how to show them how you are the perfect person for that role, how to network in the right places, and connecting them with remote first hiring managers as well. Really it's not what you know, who you know, really making those connections happen as well.
Love that. And for maybe a lot of people out there listening, they've never had the remote role and this sounds like something that is out of reach for them. But when you're talking about remote, are we talking about remote USA, remote anywhere in the world? Let's let people know exactly what you're helping them with.
Yeah, it's mixed. Some people are quite happy not leaving their hometown. They just want to be in their home office and they simply don't want to commute anymore. So that's one scenario of the person. That's what I would class as working from home. So there's different levels. And then you got remote first, where you may be asked to come into the office once a month, once a quarter. Some people are quite happy with that as well. And then you've got the fully remote. The fully remote can be fully remote from US, can be fully remote from UK. And then the next level up to that is work from anywhere. So these are the kind of golden ones that are harder to find, but they exist. And the reason people think that it's not possible for them is they're not looking in the right places. They don't know where to find them. And they just kind of make the assumption, no, that it's only remote US. That's all I'm seeing. It's only remote Canada. And they don't seem to know that there's a whole world out there that they just haven't discovered because no one's shown them where to find these places. So there's various different levels. I've helped so many people actually a lot of people like yourself who wanted to go from the US to Spain or to Europe. It's harder. I'm not going to deny it. Remote US is much easier. But if you're good at what you do and you're going about it in the right places and being connected to the right people, there are those opportunities out there, either as a freelancer, a consultant, or actually a job job.
Mm-hmm. So true. I mean, I had a remote job with an American company while I lived in Spain, but I know for even myself, that felt something like that was the unicorn, right? And then once I got it, I realized, oh, wow, well, just seeing the company was a globally distributed company to be like, wow, everyone at this company gets to work from where they want to. Like, this is actually a thing. And while it is challenging because it's so much more competitive now, it is very much possible.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how starting your business then gave you this opportunity to be nomad, because would you consider yourself a digital nomad or nomadic?
I don't like that term, but I guess I come under that bracket. I've been traveling a lot over the last year, and I've been in different countries, probably 6 or 7 different countries over the last year. So I'd say that's pretty nomadic. I prefer the term location independent because I feel like the term digital nomad has this connotations that almost like you have to be traveling and on the move every month or two. Even though it's not within the definition. So to me, I actually want to not travel as often as I have been doing. I want to have a base for 3 or 4 months and then another base for 3 or 4 months. So that's the direction that I'm moving towards. But stupid British passport, Schengen days, EU, 90 days, it makes it harder. So I kind of have to move. So that makes it more difficult.
Definitely. Well, yes, Americans feel your pain. We are in the same boat with that. But when you started out then, when you had the opportunity then to, after Bali to think, wow, I can really just take my work with me wherever I want to go since I'm location independent. Did you have any, doubts or fears about starting a life that was more, on the road without a home base?
No, but I think my situation's a little bit different because I've not lived in the same house for more than 2 years since I was 11. So did a lot of moving when I was a kid. And even though we might have stayed in a similar town and moved on, we moved to Spain for a little bit. And it was, I've traveled a lot and moved a lot as being a kid. So I think I've always felt unsettled, which is like the irony now that I'm really trying to feel more settled, but without taking that freedom away from me of saying that you have to be in this place. And that's for me, that it's not the travel. It's not how often. It's about the freedom of choice of if I want to stay in just one place within a 5-kilometer radius for 12 months of the year, I can and I will. But if I want to move every single week, if I want to, I can. And that for me is don't take away my freedom of choice. That's the important thing for me.
Yeah, I know. I'm the same too now. Actually, when I moved to Spain, I moved to Spain and I lived in Spain kind of like normally, right? I had a week vacation here and there, but I would say in the last year was the year where I got the itch. Last year was year 9 in Spain. I got the itch that I wanted to be on the road more, but just having that freedom to be able to make that choice of hey, it was kind of like a realization, wait, I don't have to be in Spain for the majority of the year. I can actually be on the road as much as I want to. And I put that to the test last year. So I was out in Spain about 6 months last year and might do the same this year too. Yeah, it was a lot of travel and it was fun. But it's funny how it goes in seasons. I thought I just want to have, sometimes you want to have the community and you want to be in one place and you want to have routine. But I think I'm itching for something else. Now.
Yeah. And it's funny. Some people, like you said about you having a base and then go off on holidays for a few weeks. That wouldn't be my preferred. I would rather have, like I said, 3 months here, 3 months there, 3 months there, because the travel I find exhausting. So I think having the back and forth for me wouldn't work. I'd rather I'm going here and I'm going to stay there for 3 months. Then I'm going to go here. So that kind of sits with where I am at the minute, but that might change next year.
Yeah, you never know. But that is the beauty with having the flexibility with certain remote work that you can, create the life that you want on your terms. Yeah. That is the freedom of it, right? Let's talk about what some of the biggest misconceptions people have. You're working with people day in and day out with your clients. What do you see come up from them with what they think about remote work and how it actually is?
I wouldn't say these are necessarily misconceptions from my clients because a lot of my clients are 35 plus, but I think some of the misconceptions from the younger generation on remote work might be that you get to, especially what you get on social media, people working just from a beach, not doing much work, doing 2 or 3 hours of work. And and not actually working. Like it is work. Like I can spend sometimes 12 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week in a co-working and not really seeing anybody or not seeing much of outside because I'm really cracking on with work. So I think this vision that it's going to solve all of your problems and life's going to be perfect 7 days a week, it doesn't always work that way. For me, it really is having that flexibility that I can take a Wednesday off because I want to snowboard in the morning and I want to do this in the evening, you know? So that for me, or knowing I can spend a week or two with my family in the UK, for example. So I think the misconceptions is that it's all play and no work. That's not the case. And I think there's another misconception that it's lonely. And honestly, I don't understand where this comes from. People seem to misconstrue work from home and work remote. It doesn't need to mean that you're working from your home. I have way more of a social life and a more fulfilling and a rich social life that isn't just centered around the pub working remotely than I ever did in London, because I'm in a co-work and I'm surrounded by people that I can choose to be around. Like in an office, you don't get a choice of who you're hanging out with, right? Whereas I have a really rich, diverse group of international people at my fingertips, but I can also leave at any point I want and go and work from home if it's too much stimulating, or I can go work from a cafe, put my headphones in and log off. But people seem to think it's lonely or have this misconception that it's lonely working remote. And I've just never, ever, the only time I faced that was when it was lockdown and we didn't have a choice. We couldn't go out anywhere. So I think that's a real misconception that I am always battling against, of like, it's only lonely if you choose it to be. Like if you don't leave your house, of course you're going to be lonely. Like you're not going to leave it and meet anyone, but there's loads of places you can work from a friend's house, from a co-working, from a cafe. There's loads of options out there.
Definitely. And it, depends on the person too. Like I love working from home. One, because I just have my setup the way that I want it, right? Like nothing really can replicate my home office in the same way. But still, I mean, during the week, like you said, like I'll go to the cafe one day and work. There's a co-working that I'll go to. Yeah. And when I'm on the road, it's so fun also just to go to different co-workings and be surrounded by different people, different cultures, but I will still work from home too. I find there's less distractions in a way for me at home. Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes you're like, oh, I need to do laundry and the Amazon delivery guy's here. And, but sometimes I can really just hunker down and focus when I'm at home. But it's nice to have, the options to break it up. Let's talk about common mistakes job seekers make when applying for remote roles.
Common mistakes would be to spray and pray rather than actually making a conscious effort with their applications. And I get it, right? Especially when I feel like this is catch-22 and people are going around this circle of like bots talking to bots. They're just getting automated responses and I get a rejection email. I think, oh, sod it. I'm not getting a yes. I'm just going to just blanket apply and do a numbers gain and hope that something comes through. But I think that's a really poor strategy to go with, because what you're getting is you're putting your worst foot forward. You're making a bad first impression to perhaps a company in a role that you really are good at and wanted to do. And you're also getting way more rejection emails. And I don't care how thick your skin is, seeing all of those rejection emails in your inbox for roles that you probably don't even want and you didn't even put much effort to, that's chipping away at your confidence. We put so much of our self-worth into what we do for a living, good or bad, and having this rejection constantly is not a good feeling. So I would say you're better off to make 5 purposeful applications a week than making 20, 25 or so blanket ones, and use your time wisely for ones that you actually want to consider. I use dating analogies quite a lot because there's quite a lot of parallels. Just because you go on more dates doesn't mean you might hopefully meet the one. Aren't you better to filter a little bit better to save your time and make sure those dates you have are a conscious effort of both of you having a mutual interest in each other? So I'd use the same for jobs.
Great advice. Yeah. I mean, looking for work, it's exhausting. So also conserving your energy so that you can create, like you said, the right application for the right jobs instead of just spreading yourself thin among many jobs that, like you said, you don't even want. And I love that term, spraying and praying.
I didn't think it everywhere I saw it, but it's great. But that's another point you make about like conserving your energy. A common mistake is people feeling the pressure, especially people who are out of work, feeling the pressure that they should be applying every day and that they can't take time off because they might miss an opportunity and it doesn't show that they're dedicated. It's just like the gym. You need a rest day. You need to give yourself a break and come back with it with a fresh pair of eyes. Like if that's 1 or 2 days a week, one piece of advice, please give yourself a break. If you're at this, especially if you're not working and you're treating this as like a full-time job, you need that break. Take some time off, go for a walk. I do most Sundays, I do a phone-free day. I used to do a screen-free day, but I've kind of like been doing some work on my laptop. But having that phone-free day where I'm not contactable for the day, it really, I feel like that re-energizes me. So doing something like that.
Love that. Let's talk about, because I get this question a lot. People want to know what industries or job types are like the most open to remote work, or like where they're going to find jobs in certain sectors. Is there, or what, some sectors more remote friendly than others, or nowadays is kind of any job can be done remotely?
It's a two-part question. Of course, there are industries and sectors that are more open to remote, but I wouldn't look at it this way. Instead, I would urge people, instead of looking at like what number of sectors are, think about the industries and sectors that you're most interested in and you have experience in. If you're trying to get a remote role and you want to get out of the existing sector that you've been in or the existing industry, it's going to be harder for you. I'm not saying it's impossible, but if you're going to switch from let me use an industry, healthcare, for example. If you have been in the healthcare industry and you're wanting to get your first remote role that is not in the healthcare industry, it's going to be harder than if you were to targeting that sector. So if you're looking for that first remote role, go with what you know, because they're going to be more likely to go with you to bring that industry experience if you don't have the role experience or remote working experience. So instead of focusing on, okay, what sectors are easier, use what you've got and it will be easier for that reason.
Love that. I'm not sure if you gave that example in one of your sessions in the Refreshers Lounge, or I saw that somewhere else, but one example I really like is like for someone who's a teacher, an educator,
yes.
Instead of trying to make a jump into a different industry, why not look into like ed tech roles or companies that work with education where you can find remote work?
Yeah,
fabulous.
Exactly. Yeah, it was me.
Love it. And then what are 1 or 2 tips that you would give to someone, who wants to be more competitive in terms of applications? Because while there have never been more remote work opportunities than ever, there also have never been so many people, vying for these same roles. So how can a candidate stand out in an application?
Yeah, I just want a slight correction on that, actually. There's less remote roles now than there were in 2021 and 2022.
Really?
Sadly, yeah.
Oh my God, I'm shocked.
Which is crappy. But you're right, the demand has been gradually rising. In 2023, only 9% of jobs on LinkedIn were remote, and 43% of all applications go to those 9%. So that just shows you the disparity between the supply and demand, which is why you say the competition is so high.
What are some ways that candidates can stand out? Do you have 1 or 2 tips for them in the application?
It depends on the role that they're going for and the industry. There's not like a blanket piece of advice, but what I would ask them to do is look at it through the eyes of the recruiter looking at your profile. So I want you to pretend that the person reading your profile is either one of these 3, or maybe all 3. Lazy, stupid is the first day on the job. Busy is another one. And knowing that the average recruiter spends 6 seconds scanning a resume, how are you going to show them in that first fold of your resume or LinkedIn that they should read more? It's the hook. Everyone knows about this marketing hook that's going to get them to read more. Like putting lots of fluffy things about who you are, what you do, scrap that. How can you solve their problem, their requirements in their job in the first 6 seconds to make them want to read more of the rest of your resume? So think of it like completely spin it from the other way. Never forget about what's important to you and what you want. But at this stage, you are selling a service yourself. We're all selling a service here. What's going to make them want to buy? What's your shop window? What's your storefront going to make them want to walk in?
Yeah, that is a great way to look at it and think about it. I know you've talked about networking and how important that is in landing a remote job. If you could maybe tell us like how important it is, because it is important, and what are some practical ways people can build connections these days?
Over 70% of roles are filled via networking. So that's not to say that they're not posted, but there is a hidden job market as well for these roles that never get to be posted. So in my team, I've got a team of 6 at the moment. And not one of them was a cold application. I either met them in person, someone recommended them. One person had absolutely no experience, but her cousin said to me, she's great, you need to hire her. And I'm like, okay, get her on board. So that's how important networking is. If you think I've got a team of 6 and not one person was hired from a cold application. So it's vital. It really is vital. What I would urge for people is to get out there in as many places as you could think. You don't need to look into necessarily networking events for jobs per se, but you go and find things you're interested in. It could be a dog walking service. It could be you're interested in lacrosse, or like think about places where you can meet people without going into these events with the notion of what can I get out of it. Go in with an open mind of what can I learn, what interesting people can I meet, and who can I connect to other people. One really good tip is for people who are really afraid to ask for something, think about what you can do. Like, who can I introduce someone to? Like for you, Seppi, like I've introduced you to lots of people over the years because I get a buzz out of it because I'm thinking Seppi needs to speak to this person, because them two would either get along or they can have this work collaboration. You've done the same for me. Everybody's happy. I'm happy because you bothered to think about me. The person's happy because oh, how lovely that they thought that we should connect. You're happy because you see that we've connected and think, yes, I did that. So it's like, it's a no-brainer on the networking, but it doesn't always have to be networking of going in with a badge, with your name and be like, hi, I'm looking for a job. Here's my resume. Just going into these events, online, in person, get out there. Like I was in a cafe a few hours ago and I was on a call with one of my clients and I was working them through their CV, and I got off the call and this woman comes to me. I'm in Belgrade at the minute in Serbia. And she's like, I'm from London. I heard your accent and saw you're from the UK. Are you a recruiter? I need some help with my CV. I'm like, I didn't go there to network. I went there to go and do some work, but you never know who you're going to meet in these places. So just get yourself out there.
It's true. A lot of the freelancers that I work with She Hit Refresh are members or somebody that I've connected through She Hit Refresh. You're hiring for who you know because that is a trusted reference, right? I have hired from Upwork, but now most days I'm asking my friends, do you know someone? Or I'm asking my communities, does anybody? I mean, an example that I've made throughout this podcast season is, my podcast manager and editor is one of my members from the Refreshers Lounge.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, because she had mentioned, when she joined the community that this is the kind of work she was looking for. Didn't really have the podcast on my mind at the time. And a few months later, when I knew I wanted to bring it back, I was like, hey, Kat's a podcast manager. Let me reach out to her. So
love that.
So what are some realistic first steps for someone who wants to transition to remote work?
That really depends at what stage they're at. I would say for everyone, even someone who has worked in remote before and they're getting the next remote role, is like you would if you're about to build a house. You wouldn't go and start building the house, in this case, creating your resume, until you've got a real clear picture of what the house looks like. So you want what the windows size, where the door's going to be. It's the same for your job search. Get crystal clear on what it is that you want and what you can do remotely. So go as specific as what salary range are you looking for? What level of remote are you happy with? What are your non-negotiables? What industries are you targeting? People get too broad, and what they do is they're like, oh, I just want anything as long as it's remote. Are you going to hire someone that just wants anything? Are you going to date someone who just wants any boyfriend or girlfriend? Not really. You're not going to feel very special. You want to get as specific as possible. That's not to say that you're dismissing other opportunities. It's just making sure that you're truly targeted on the roles that are aligned to you and what you actually want, and work off what your ideal looks like, what you're happy to accept, and what your non-negotiables are. And there's pillars of that. It could be the level of remote, work from anywhere, remote from country, the salary, And then what I put in everything else of fulfillment, role, industry, excitement. Some people are quite happy to go for a 6-figure salary and everything else is not important. I'll work on the job. I'll work 80 hours a week. I'll do this. I just want that salary. No judgment at all. Other people are like, you know what? I'd take a 20 grand drop if I got work from anywhere and in any industry. Other people are like, it must be social impact. I must be making a difference. So I might forego on the others. You may get top of all. You might get 6 figures, fulfillment, work from anywhere, but that's like the jackpot. So think about which of those pillars you're willing to forego on in lieu of getting something like the other 2 pillars are important. I hope that makes sense.
Definitely. Well, I'm just thinking if anyone listening is like, okay, I like what she's talking about. How do you help people? Like, what are the ways that they can work with you?
So I have a program which is called the Remote Job Academy. And the way I work with people is a combination of a course that they can go and do in, like I was saying to you before, this is something I found I was teaching people a lot of the same things when I was doing one-to-one coaching. So I've got the course there for people that they have lifetime access to. Community is a really big part of this. I know that you have a big and successful community. I did not realize the benefit that community can have in being with like-minded people who are going through this with you, are in the trenches applying and having that support, accountability, having the buddy system. So there's the community, there's the course, there's my coaching. So I have calls with people on a weekly basis so they can get advice, they can get feedback. We also share with them jobs every week. So 2 to 3 jobs every week for 16 weeks. We will share the jobs that they want to see. I'll also share a resume with my network of 16,000 recruiters. So really getting it out there to the people and making those connections, saying, hey, have you thought about this company? Have you tried this tip on LinkedIn? It's not just about the outbound. It's teaching people how they can get people coming to them as well. So they don't have to make as many applications. They don't get the same number of rejections and ghosting, and just showing them how to show their value to these remote first employers. So it's a combination of all of this.
I love that. I mean, because people need help in so many different ways, because finding a job is not just about applying. There's so much more that goes into, being successful in your job search. So yeah, I love it. Michelle, been following her for a long time. She works with us in the Refreshers Lounge. Like, she is legit. So definitely look into her. I want to ask you, because maybe there's people who are listening that are also interested in your success as a business person. So you've built a business. It supports your location independent lifestyle. What advice do you have for other people who are thinking of starting their own remote business?
I think it comes down, for those of you who don't know anything about Ikigai, I won't explain it because I'll probably butcher it, but go and look into Ikigai. But it's essentially getting paid for something that you're good at and something that you enjoy. So what I do right now in helping people get remote work is my mode of genius, if you like. I love it. I just get off on making connections with people. I do coach, but a lot of what I'm doing is showing and telling, a little bit like a personal trainer of like, okay, do this, change that, do that. I love making these like practical changes that people can just put into place, right? Rather than doing like fluffy, airy, just listen to your heart. Like, that's not practical advice. You can do a bit of like manifesting, yes, but you need a bit of pragmatic advice of like, if you change this, this will happen. These are the positives of having an open to work banner on LinkedIn. These are the negatives, and just a reality check for some people. Some people people are really afraid to be true to themselves and be honest if they don't want to offend someone or they don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm not always going to say the right thing. And sometimes I might give advice that someone else says the opposite of. That's fine. So going back to the point here of like what advice I would give is like, are you setting a business up because you feel like it's what you should do and you think it's the only way to getting remote or location freedom? Are you doing it because it's something you're going to enjoy and that you're getting a lot out of? And is it your mode of genius, or are you doing it just because you're good at it, but you don't actually enjoy doing it? And it depends what you're looking for. I never set up Remote Rebellion to become a millionaire. If I do, amazing. And I'm working really hard and I have revenue goals, but that was never the purpose of the business. But that's not to say that that's wrong. If you want to set up a business because you want to be a millionaire, billionaire, whatever, but asking yourself the reasons why you want to do something and there's a downside to everything, right? Like if you want to go and get investment for your business, you're answering to or beholden to the investors. If you want to bootstrap it, you've got to put more hours in and more time, and it's going to take longer. So asking yourself the right questions and go in asking loads of different people who set up businesses, especially if you're a female entrepreneur. We are so ingrained in seeing how men do it that we feel like we have to do the same, and that you have to put in 80 hours a week in order to be successful. And if you don't want it enough. And I don't subscribe to that. Like, I want to be able to snowboard for 2 hours a day if I want to, or 3 hours a day. I want to be able to surf. Does that mean that I'm not ambitious enough? No, it's just this is my way of doing it. So don't subscribe to the way that everyone else is telling you should. Instead, speak to lots of different people and see what resonates with you. The way that you run your business might not align with me. The way that someone else does might not either. So finding a combination and be like, so you do it like that? That's interesting. That wouldn't work for me, I don't think. Or I could take some pieces from that. So ask loads of different people from lots of different backgrounds.
I love that advice, because working in a silo is never the way to do it, or like figuring things out in a silo. If you're thinking about starting a business, talking to people is invaluable. I mean, people have reached out to me that I have either maybe been on their podcast or worked with them in some capacity to pick my brain. And I just thought like, wow, I should have done that more when I was starting out. I don't know why I did it. Yeah. Now I'm always looking for opportunities. I'm either like paying to go to a retreat to learn from people, or just asking when I'm in a room with people who are 10 steps ahead of me, just to get their insights.
Because you feel like you're bothering people, don't you? Like, I don't want to bother them. I'm going to look like I don't have a clue what I'm doing. They're going to think I'm so stupid. I don't know these basic things. Like, but everyone starts somewhere. No one's born knowing how to run a business. So just being around other people who are figuring other stuff out. They might not be figuring the exact thing that you're trying to figure out, but they'll be figuring something. Joining a mastermind group is something I would highly recommend. A mastermind group of people that are a few steps ahead, like you said, but also people that might be at your level or maybe a step behind. So you can feel good that you're a little bit a step ahead, and then you can learn from the people who are way a few steps ahead of you as well.
I agree. All right. So real quick, because I do want to talk about an exciting new thing that you have created. We'll talk about that real quick. But first I want to ask, like, what is your take on the future of remote work? I was shocked to hear that stat that there's actually less remote jobs out there than there were a few years ago. So do you think that companies are going to be rolling it back? Or they're going to be embracing remote work more? What are you seeing, or what do you foresee?
I am seeing that a lot of organizations, especially in the US and in parts of Europe, are mandating this return to office. I think that is going to continue with the larger organizations until the economy picks up. And sadly, companies have the power. They know that people are looking for these jobs. They know there's high demand, and they know they have the power to have the puppet on a string and have you come into the office. I believe that's going to continue until the economy picks up. However, what people don't see, and the things that don't make the headlines, are the number of startups that are introduced into market that are growing at an exponential rate that you don't hear about because they're the little guys. They're hiring remote because of cost saving. They are looking for people. They understand that they want a diverse global access to global market and top talent. And the best talent wants flexibility. Let's be honest. They want autonomy more so because they can. They're like, I work when I want, I work where I want because I'm really good at what I do and I can demand that. And these companies know that, but these don't make the headlines. But I think this is the trajectory. It's going to continue to grow. The bigger organizations, more return to office. And then the smaller ones are still coming up and they're hiring and they're growing. I remember listening to Chris Hurd from First Base talking about this. And he basically put it really bluntly in his lovely Scottish accent. He basically said, these dinosaurs who are running these C-suites, who are running these large companies, are going to die in 10, 20 years. And then that's when we're really going to see a drop off of their return to office mandates because they know it doesn't make sense for the next generations.
Okay. Well, then I guess there's some positivity there too. Not with, well, I don't know, dinosaurs dying, but at least with all the startups, like there are companies that are still very much going to be remote first, fully distributed, and they're looking for people, regardless of where you are in the world. It really is talent based, right? Or meritocracy there. But let's talk about your interesting project. We are getting to the end of the podcast here, but I want to hear about your remote work fair and expo that's happening this year in May. Yes. So tell us about this amazing event.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about this, and it's been something that I've been thinking about for years, actually. But I've just had so many other projects going on that I haven't got around to actually making the plans. So I was a recruiter for 7 years, focused on companies, helping them hire. Now I'm focused for the last 4 years on individuals and helping them find their ideal role. But I miss recruitment. I miss a company coming to me and saying, we need this kind of person. They need to have these skills. I miss that hunt for finding the right person for the role. Even though I still get that hunt with an individual finding their role, it's a little bit of a different. So I was like, okay. And I was thinking back to some of the events we've been to, so the running remote event, some of the nomad festivals. And I think what's missing in there is a way to connect people looking for certain opportunities with remote first businesses. So this is what the job fair is going to be. It's going to be a way to connect top talent and talent that are like bit of creme de la creme. They're not just anyone that looking for roles, but it's attracting top talent looking for not just any role, but something specific, something that aligns with their values, and connecting them with remote first companies that are hiring and that want to have those conversations. Like the human element of hiring has been taken out recently, and people are sick of it. People are sick of talking to bots, and recruiters are sick of getting ChatGPT CVs that all look the same. So there's like lack of human element. So bringing that back together of having this online event and this job fair that isn't just like a lot of people remember job fairs where you hand over a resume to this booth and get a free pen or free badge or whatever. It's going to be more meaningful than that, where there's actual connections made. And there'll be presentations where companies will go and say, this is who we are. These are the kind of people that thrive at this organization. And they can have those real-time conversations with the individuals. So, yeah, I'm super excited about this. And I'm going to do an in-person one in October, probably in Dublin, but I'm going to do the online one first.
So this first one will be virtual. It's happening in May. Do you have the exact dates yet?
Yes, I do. It's the 9th and 10th of May, and it's going to be live starting at 8 a.m. PST. So to factor in the EMEA time zones and also EMEA.
And is this invite only, or can listeners sign up to attend?
They can sign up to attend. We're not going out to advertise it to job seekers just yet, because I realize May is quite a way away and people are like, hey, I want to get a job before May. So at the moment, we're putting this out to companies, to remote first companies, and getting those on board. And then we'll be putting it out to the individuals to say, these are the companies we've got joining. If you want to join, if this looks interesting, come along.
Where can people, I guess, find out more about Remote Rebellion, about the job fair, or just want to connect with you or follow along?
Yeah, so the best way, website, remoterebellion.com, on LinkedIn and Instagram, Remote Rebellion. They're the two main sources. I post quite a lot of free resources and information on LinkedIn and also on Instagram, so people can get an idea of what we're all about, how we help people. And yeah, just reach out to me directly and send me a message and we'll see if we can work together.
Fabulous. We'll definitely include all of that in the show notes. And just to give people one last little bit of advice, if anyone listening out there is feeling stuck or unsure, if they can make remote work happen for them, what would you say to them?
Think about why you want this and what you're willing to forgo to get this. So, we talked about what's the worst that can happen. I'm not saying you have to forgo your salary. I'm not saying you have to forgo 8 hours a day of your time, but think about, if I had to, what would I give up for this? Do I want it enough? Because finding remote work is not easy. It's a challenge. So something's got to give. There's some sort of sacrifice you got to make to be able to find that role. So I would say, if do you want it enough? If you do, then there's some sacrifices, whether that's with your finances, with getting help from someone, whether that's with your time to dedicate to it, or if it's maybe taking a slight drop in your salary. We're so caught up on our value being attributed to a number. And I think that leaves some people very stuck. I must get 6 figures. Well, if you're going from the US to Spain, as you know, you need probably half the amount of salary that you would do living in that environment. So think about what that needs to look like for you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. If anyone is interested, head over to Remote Rebellion. Yes, thank you so much for your time and sharing your insights with us.
Thanks so much. See you later.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode and leave feeling like a move abroad is even more possible for you. If you're happy with what you saw, I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and leave a question or comment, because I would love to hear from you. If you're ready to take action on your dream to move abroad, be sure to grab my visa guide to Europe. It's your roadmap to over 50 viable visa options in 19 countries. You can grab the link below in the show notes. And don't forget to get on the wait list for my next Move Abroad After 30 Masterclass, a masterclass for women age 30 and up, which is a step-by-step training to help you fast track your move abroad. And grab the link in the show notes as well. And last but not least, a huge shout out to our sponsor, International Living. Thank you so much for making this season possible. Until next time, ciao for now.